We got so good. I keep really back. Alright, we have some things to talk about. Retreat. February 10th to the 12th, it's going to be $25. You can Venmo me, Nate at Kidwell. Or you can park the cash. You guys are coordinated today. This is number 6 because I just did my slide and pull it down, but I forgot that we have a new slide this week that I put in. So it's actually this Sunday. Hopefully you saw that on Instagram when I posted, hey, we're not going to do it on this Sunday, it'll be next Sunday, because the camps have been seeking people, and so they're going to take a rest. They're going to take a rest, and so we're going to do it this Sunday. If you haven't signed up for the meal train, sign up for the meal train so we can know you're coming. I've had like maybe 3 or 4 people text me and say that they're coming. And so either none of you are planning to come, which would be very sad, or you're all college students that are just waiting until probably like Sunday afternoon to say, oh, by the way, we're coming. And that's not very helpful because we're going to have all the tables and chairs out on Saturday. So I really need to know who's coming, like soon. So either sign up on the meal train and be a good, productive person, bring some food, or also be a good person, just not as productive, and come to the house interest, but let me know that you're coming. Good? Good. Thanks. I just got to know where I'm from. I didn't look at it. November 27th, we're doing this the night of Thanksgiving. So there's the cards, there's the flyers. We need you to pass those out. Hang the flyers up on your campus. Pass out those cards to people that you're around if possible. That will be very helpful. People that go to Faulkner, drop them on tables like Cafe Siena, put a flower up on the wall. Take advantage of the fact that you go to a Christian college and hang out stuff for this. Tell your friends about it, word of mouth. Most people, I feel like most of you will be back on Sunday night anyways, unless you're going to come in like on Monday morning or something. And so, so talk about this, please. One thing is this Saturday at 10:30, we're going to meet here, and then we'll spread out. I will have some zones for us to cover, and so what I want to do is, as many of you who will want to come this Saturday at 10:30, we will get into cars, and you'll be in teams, and you'll go out, and you will post flyers to different businesses and areas of like zones that I give you. You'll take a picture with your flyer, and then whoever has the most pictures of their flyer with their flyers, meaning like you put out the most flyers, I will buy your Chick-fil-A. Well, I'll just go to Chick-fil-A after, and I'll just pay for your Chick-fil-A for lunch. And so we're going to do that this Saturday, 10:30. And so if you want to help with that, that would be awesome. Jimmy's very excited. Dapping everybody up. He's that guy.
That's facts. He is that guy.
This Saturday or next Saturday? This Saturday. Should be the here the 2:12.
I'm going hiking.
You got main loading. From Dallas?
I am. It's the last one.
Time out on this day, but I didn't realize this was the last Faulkner football game and it's home.
It's the last home game.
Okay, all right. So time out on that one, and then just be on the lookout for on the Instagram, and I might just do it like on a weekday evening or something. Sorry for the confusion there. Scratch the Saturday. Look for on the Instagram for weekday evening. We'll do the same thing. I'll buy you dinner.
Yeah, you will.
All right. Sorry about that. Just even like going for Texas or something.
No.
All right. Let's get started. Today we're talking about love does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. I thought this was a very interesting topic, one that I've never talked about, but it's one that actually stretches to a lot of aspects of your life. And so I'm excited to talk to you about it. Let's first begin in prayer, and then we'll dive in. So is there anything that we need to pray about before we?
Yeah, so my sister-in-law's sister, she had the flu, got very dehydrated, and she went into kidney failure, and she was on the septic, but then she rushed to the hospital, and they say she's stable for now. Just pray for her. She's 15.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Election stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So election stuff.
My sister, She's found out she's pregnant, so.
Ben.
On.
Right. Anything else? Yeah, James.
My great grandmother had to with her also on this movie.
Okay. All right. James' great grandmother. Yes.
I was going to go back home and go into her dad's life.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Oh, yes. No. 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 Okay. Yes. Okay. No. All right. All right. All right. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for today. We thank you for the blessings you've given to us. We thank you for the time that we had to be together and to open up your word, to study with one another, for the encouragement that it brings, and the uplifting feeling that we can have leaving this every Wednesday, and just from being together and from opening up your word together. Lord, we come to you with some requests and some situations that we want your hand in. Lord, we ask that you be with Jillian's friend. Her dad is dying, and be with her family and comfort them during this difficult time. Be with James's great grandmother. She's Alzheimer's, and be with his whole family. As that's just a difficult thing to observe and a difficult thing to go through, and comfort them and all of that. Be with Nathan's sister, as she just found out she's pregnant. Be with her pregnancy with the baby, and that everything goes well. That the whole development process is smooth, and that everyone remains healthy throughout the whole process. Lord, we ask that you be with Jimmy's sister-in-law's sister, as she's in a very difficult state right now in her health, and we ask that you be with her and heal her, be with her whole family, as this is a difficult situation to endure. Lord, there's so many things that we're dealing with, so many things that are happening in our lives right now. We are mindful of the elections that are happening and the voting that has gone on recently, and we ask that the leaders that are elected will lead the country in the way that you have it, and that we as Christians fulfill our obligation of respecting our leaders and praying for our leaders, no matter if we agree with them or not. We love you. We're thankful for you. It's in your Son's name that we pray. Amen. So, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 6. We were in verse 5 for, I'm pretty sure, like 5 weeks. And we've made it to verse 6. And so this is a simple verse. Like, usually there's a word that we just dig into. But this one is a little bit different because it's such a long kind of phrase. And we don't really need necessarily definitions. And so I gave you some options as to what the word could mean. So, love does not rejoice or delight. It can mean anything. In wickedness, unrighteousness, or wrongdoing. But rejoices or delights with the truth. What are your maybe initial thoughts as to what this could mean? Are there words that stand out on this, or is there an idea that you think should be discussed in this that just stands out to you? And it might not. That's fine if not.
I see like set apart. Like love is like not I wouldn't say partaking, but I can't think of another word for now. But love is not partaking into making light into wickedness and unrighteousness. Mm-hmm. It's not those things.
Right. So yeah, you can't take part in wickedness and unrighteousness and also be loving. Is that what you're trying to get at? Okay. Yeah. So there's that. What are you gonna say?
I was kind of just the same thing. The only thing that I was going to add was just it defines this difference between like situations with truth, like aspects that are truthful, but in kind of like negative like situations with negative connotations. Mm-hmm. So it's like there's a set apart, because I think that in like the time that we live in, it's easy sometimes for us like jump the gun and like get very passionate about situations, and we focus on kind of like the negative aspects, and we're like, we justify by saying, well, like we love this person, so we're gonna, get too invested and too involved, that there's like this difference between the truth aspect of it and then the fact of like where you go into like gossip and
Right. Okay.
those
Okay. So yeah. So more loving involves knowing truth and not just acting on emotion. I guess. Okay. Cool.
Does it have to do with like, well, doesn't rubber stamp or like accept sin?
Yeah.
Behavior?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And we're going to get into that a lot actually in a little while. But yeah, I think that's kind of hitting the nail on the head there. So let's talk about. I'm just going to kind of ask a few kind of opening questions. When encountering evil, what potential responses do you have? You encounter something that's wicked. How can you respond?
Fleeing from it.
Okay, you can flee from it. Oh no. Okay, yeah. So you are confronting. This is what you're doing. There's something that's evil. You realize that it's evil. You can either flee from it or not. Right? You can accept it. You either accept it or you reject it. There's no really other way that you can respond. Like toleration of evil is accepting. Anything other than fully rejecting what is evil, separating yourself from what is evil, is accepting. If you're tolerating, if you are kind of just like letting it happen, but just ignoring it, that is accepting. If you are not rejecting it, you're accepting. What do you think that it means to rejoice in wickedness?
Be happy when something bad happens.
Exactly. When something bad happens to someone else, when there is wickedness that exists, when there is unrighteousness or wrongdoings that happen, and you rejoice in that, it delights you, or you take delight in it, then that is what is being discussed. It is a failure to reject evil, and what it means to rejoice in wickedness. It is accepting wickedness. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20 says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil." And what that means is saying that anything that is evil, that we confuse or perceive to be good, is what Isaiah is talking about. He says, "Woe to those who do that." We should not be rejoicing in things that are seen as good if they are evil. We see this happen a lot today, right? People say that things are good and they're not. By biblical standards, they are evil. So regardless of who says they are good, regardless of what standard that says this is good or bad, if it is evil by the biblical standard, then it is evil. It is not good. Romans chapter 1, verse 32 says, "And although they know the ordinance of God, that those who practice such things are worthy of death, they not only do the same, but also give hearty approval to those who practice them." So Paul is talking about people that are accepting what is wrong when knowing the truth. And they know that according to the truth, what some others are doing are wrong. And yet, there is a group of people who know what is right and are accepting it anyways. They're accepting what is true. This is a failure to reject evil. They're just accepting, tolerating it, allowing it to happen. And it shouldn't. What do you think that it means to rejoice with the truth? The latter half of this.
I mean, embracing truth, I mean, you're looking towards truth, you're allowing truth into your life, and you're joyful that truth and light and goodness is around you instead of evil.
Okay, yeah, so you're rejoicing in the fact that there are things around you that are true. And so let's ask this question. That's going to lead to, I think, we're getting. Where do we get truth from? The Bible, the gospel. That is what we know to be true. And so when we talk about this, we can equate the two. So evil and truth are what is being opposed to. And knowing this allows us to make the distinction between the gospel, which is the truth, and anything else. And anything else that is not good, that is evil, that is not true. These are the distinctions that we're making. So to rejoice in anything that reflects or is a result of the gospel being obeyed or enacted would be things that are truth, things that we can rejoice in, delight in. And there's a note: love does not rejoice in the truth. So if you read it, it says, "Love does not rejoice or delight in wickedness, but rejoices, delights with the truth." There's a difference of prepositions there that I didn't notice at first. And love does not rejoice in the truth, in this case, because the word for rejoice points toward a reason outside of itself. Like, there is a reason outside of you as to why you are rejoicing, as though it is rejoicing with someone or something else, is what's being said here. So that's why it doesn't say rejoices in the truth. It says rejoices with the truth. There's a reason outside of yourself and what you can produce that you are having joy from. Why do you think that Paul tells the Corinthians this whole section here? Why do you think Paul tells the Corinthians this? There's a very simple answer you can give if you don't have textual reasons. Noah, what do you think?
When I look at the Corinthian letter, it's filled with a church that is not very long. You look a few chapters later, the people were simple because there are those there who have plenty of food and have no food. And so the church members need to provide. I think Paul kind of prefaces that by saying, if we're going to be Christians and be loving people in the truth, then by no means we should be loving to, especially fellow Christians.
Yeah, and so that's exactly right. So we see with the Corinthian church, we see in 1 Corinthians 5, where a man is taking part in a pretty despicable form of sexual immorality, and it was being tolerated or accepted by the church. They were not rejecting evil. We see in 1 Corinthians 11, which is what Noah's talking about, the Lord's Supper has been confused and dishonored to the point that it was causing divisions. When it was supposed to be a time where people in the body were brought together, unified into one fellowship, reminded they are one body, and people that are of the like mind, and that was not what was happening. They had not been evaluating themselves and evaluating the body as a whole, the church, for a while. Because of it, there were a lot of problems arising in the church that needed correction. And so this lack of evaluation among themselves, it was causing to dishonor the church and dishonor the Lord's Supper. They were allowing evil within them and not rejecting it. When are times when you can think of God rejecting evil or rejoicing with the truth? Should be a lot of answers. Okay, dude, we're going to talk about this in a minute. Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah. What else?
One of the biggest times rejected evil when he found one.
Yeah, because there was so much evil that he had to just clean everything. Yeah, what else?
When Jesus was baptized.
As rejoicing with the truth. Okay, yeah, what else?
Jesus in the wilderness, when Satan comes, after he was fasting, Satan coming and approaching him and offering him all the things of the world.
Okay, so and he was rejecting evil. Is that what you're getting at? Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. In a time where we would think he'd be very vulnerable and tempted, and he still rejected what was evil. There's a lot of these that we could give. For the sake of time, we won't. But God obviously does not accept wickedness. He can't. It is not within his nature to allow evil to go unpunished, much less accept or tolerate evil. He can't. It's against his nature. Psalm 5, verse 4 says, "For you are not a God who delights in wickedness. Evil may not dwell with you." God is a God of love by nature, 1 John chapter 4, verse 8. But he also cannot accept or rejoice in sin. He can't look past wickedness or ignore sin because he loves us. Like, this is not something that God can just let go. He can't ignore it. He can't accept it or tolerate it. And he can't because he loves us. It is actually a good thing for us. Like, there might be some of you who's thinking, oh no, like God can't ignore my sin. Like this is bad for me. But this is a good thing because he knew that we would sin. But he also knew that he can't just ignore sin. He can't just let it go and allow one into his presence who has sin on them. So he sent Jesus. It was his amazing love that allows us a way to be washed clean from the blemish of sin in the first place with the sacrifice of his Son. 1 John chapter 4, verse 10. The ultimate expression of love that we are seeing, that is seen. Psalm chapter 51. Psalm 51. Verse 6 says, "Behold, you delight in truth in the inward being." That's the first part of the verse. God rejoices in the truth. So he rejects evil. He rejoices in the truth. Because the truth is what allows man to be in his presence. And God rejoices when man does something that brings himself closer to God. He's not one that rejoices when we fail. If we were to do wrong to a friend and ask for an apology, and then do wrong again, and then ask for an apology, and then we do wrong again, and we ask for an apology, and it happens over and over again, then what do you think that friend is eventually going to think? Like, when we face consequences for our actions, because at some point that will happen. Like, we keep doing wrong, we ask for forgiveness, we keep doing wrong, at some point we're going to face consequences. And when this happens, that friend is going to think, if I'm the friend, I'm going to think, man, they had that coming. Like, it's about time that happens, right? Like, they deserved it. Like, at least they get to leave me alone now. Like, they deserved what was coming to them. But God never rejoices when man fails. He never rejoices when we fall. He is never hurt to the point where he wants to see you fail. Never once does he reach to that point of resentment, like what we talked about last week. There's never once he reaches a point where he can't stand you to even talk to him, or he's happy when you just leave him alone. He never reaches that point. He will never rejoice in wickedness, and he will always rejoice in things that reflect the gospel. Psalm 1, verses 1 and 2 says, "How blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night." Our delight is found in what is true, and his word is true. Truth tells us both what is righteous and what is not, so that we can walk in love. This is what we talked about a second ago. This is how we find out what is true. We know truth by what is said in his word. And if we are people that walk in love, which is what we're trying to do here, then we will only rejoice in truth. So, we've talked about reasons that we talked about rejoicing in truth. God rejoices in truth. He will always reject what is wicked. Well, let's talk about maybe some reasons and some ways that this looks when we decide to not reject evil. When we rejoice in wickedness, the first part of this verse, this is what this is going to look like. Here's some reasons why. I think the first way is in hatred. No matter what someone did to you or how badly you've been hurt, it is never acceptable to take delight when someone is found, for example, guilty of sin. And this is something that the more I read into, the more difficult I think it becomes. Right? The more prevalent it is. Someone hurts you. Someone does something that is wrong, and you are injured by it. Like it pains you to think about, and then you just want what's wrong. You want what's bad. You see them get caught. You see them go through something difficult. There's some sort of consequence, or some sort of punishment, or some result of their actions that they're facing, and you think, like, yes, this is what this person deserves. Like, I am justified for my pain. Like, this person deserves that. And it's a hatred. Like, it's a dislike for someone. And so this is what I mean by in hatred. For the first reason is rejoicing in something that is wrong and wickedness or sin. We see in Genesis 13. We're going to kind of briefly go through the story of Abram and Lot. Abram and Lot separate, right? We're in Genesis chapter 13. Abram basically gives Lot dibs, and he's like, you take this side or that side? He's like, okay, I'll take this side. It looks a lot better. And so he takes the better land that is closer to the worst city. Like, this city, Sodom and Gomorrah, which is what you mentioned, is terrible. And maybe they didn't know. Maybe they didn't know Sodom and Gomorrah was as bad as it is beforehand. I don't know. But he chooses what looks better. And so Sodom and Gomorrah, we know, is a sinful and terrible place. And Lot chooses to go into that city. Maybe he doesn't know that. He's about to learn. We get into Genesis chapter 14. And Lot and his family get captured by these foreign kings that are trying to come in and destroy Sodom and Gomorrah and take over a bunch of land. And so Abram gets all of his men together, gets a bunch of people, and we're going to go save Lot and his family. And they do that. And so much, they're so helpful for Sodom and Gomorrah that the king of Sodom is like, wow, let me help you out. Let me give you things. And Abram says, absolutely not, because then you're just going to say you made me rich when really it was God that's blessing. And so they have an interaction with Sodom. Abram might know at this point, okay, Sodom's a pretty bad place. Lot will probably know at this point, okay, Sodom and Gomorrah, a pretty bad place here. But Lot will eventually, he'll stay. Like, he'll eventually go back. But Sodom is kind of saved from destruction by Abram and his men. We get into Genesis chapter 18, verses 22 through 33. And we see God looking at Sodom and Gomorrah and saying, this place is terrible. I'm going to destroy it. And Abraham intercedes for Sodom and Gomorrah, specifically for Lot, really just for Lot. Trying to spare Sodom from the wrath of God because of their wickedness. So God decides that they're just so wicked they have to be punished. And Abraham tries to talk to God into sparing the city, and he works his way down to even if there's just 10 righteous people in this city, can you just spare the city? And they couldn't find 10. There's not even 10 righteous people in this big city that would be considered to be righteous. And so God didn't spare the city. So, and I'm telling this story, I'm sure most of you know it, some of you may not, but I'm going through it briefly. If you want to go learn more about it, go through Genesis 13, 14, 18, 19, and read about it. But Lot's family has to run from the city because of a warning from the Lord. And so they leave everything but Lot's wife and his 2 daughters behind. So we know Lot's wife looks back at the city against the warning of the Lord, turns into a pillar of salt, right? That's her punishment for doing something that she shouldn't have done. She shouldn't have looked back. That's what the angels of the Lord told her. She did it anyways. Question. Have you ever thought about why Lot didn't just leave when he found out the place was wicked? When he found out, oh, Sodom and Gomorrah is terrible. I don't need to be here. Why didn't he just leave in the first place? Like, what was it? Was it the land? Was that great? Was it he was just this implanted in where he was? For whatever reason, Lot stayed, knowing he had to have known quickly because it's such a bad place. He had to have known quickly. Oh, this is a bad place, and he stayed. This is such a bad place that when the angels of the Lord came to warn Lot, the men of the city, both young and old, surrounded the house, yelling for Lot to send out those men so that they could rape those men. And the angels had to strike all those men with blindness. And it said that they got tired because they were blind and groping for the door and they couldn't find it. And so they got tired and they just left. That's how bad of a place this is. Like, Lot knows that this area is evil. So why didn't he just leave? Abraham, at this point, knows that the city is evil. He can't even account for 10 righteous people in the city. How easy it could have been for Abraham to kind of rejoice in what's happened to Lot. Like, at this point, Abraham knows that Sodom and Gomorrah is bad. Lot has known that Sodom and Gomorrah is bad. Abraham could have said, why didn't you just leave? Like, this is exactly what you deserve. Your wife being turned to a pillar of salt, she shouldn't have turned back. Like, you shouldn't have stayed there. You should have just left. Like, if it's me, if I am Abraham, I'm not. I'm probably saying, you could have avoided all this if you just left when you found out it was a bad place, but you didn't. This could very easily be somewhat of a I told you so moment. Like, well, why didn't you use your senses and just leave when you found out it was terrible? But he didn't. And how many stories do we look at like that in the Bible and think those same things? Like, man, that's what you get. Like, we think of God punishing the Israelites in the wilderness, and we think, well, if you would just not turn to other gods so many times, like if you would just turn to God who allowed you to cross the Red Sea and who saved you from Egypt and you saw do all these plagues, how do you turn from God after seeing all of that? And we think, well, you got what you deserved when you had to wander in the wilderness. We see Saul being killed in battle. And you're like, yeah, like he deserves it. He was terrible to David. He should have died. Like, good deal. We read like the guilt of Peter after betraying Jesus. And you think, yeah, he deserves to feel bad. Like, he should. He betrayed Jesus 3 times after looking into Jesus' eyes and saying, I will not betray you. We see these kind of stories, and there's several others. I'm sure if I just opened it up, that you all can name multiple times that you read the Bible and think, like, that's what you get kind of moment. Like, yeah, you deserve that moment. Why do we look at the Bible when that so easily could be us? That is a way that we rejoice in wickedness. Like, rejoicing not in the fact that, like, yes, they might have deserved it. Like, the Israelites being sent to the wilderness, yes, they deserved it. They were wrong. But this is not something we should take delight in. Like like, you got in trouble kind of moment. And we're going to talk about that more in this one. You can see people accepting evil, accepting wickedness in humanitarian matters. I thought that was a pretty good title. Also, all of these start with H. because Jeremy's my deacon now, so I feel like I have to do things like that. And so when we see wars, when we see oppression or injustice of any kind, are we taking delight in that? Is this something that we rejoice in or delight in? Last week, we studied from Hosea, for the brief time that we actually got to be in Hosea. And we talked about how easily God could have just resented the Israelites for constantly turning on him, cheating on God when they were in this covenant together. And by the end of it, it would have been very easy to say, and it's kind of what I was thinking, wow, the Israelites got everything they deserved with whatever punishment they received after hurting God so badly. Like, how do you do that? And this may be true. Like, the punishment they received was just because it was God-given. And so it is fine and fair to think, well, they got what they deserved, because we did. But does that mean that we should be delighted in reading about the Israels being oppressed by nation after nation and ultimately being destroyed by the Romans? Like, should we be rejoicing in the punishment they receive and the wrongdoing they performed? Of course not. Like, that's insane. When we see injustice today, do we take delight? When our enemy is treated unfairly or unjustly, are we rejoicing? Are we delighted to see one nation fall in war? We should never be. I think about currently with Russia and Ukraine, right? If Ukraine is able to fight off Russia, and they're successful in that, then we can be glad that they were able to hold their own, right? Like, this is kind of a, hey, go get them, Ukraine kind of moment, like, as Russia's kind of trying to bully them, right? However, this is never something where we should take delight in the war itself or the deaths that are happening on either side. There is nothing to delight about in the situation because it is caused by wickedness. It's caused by evil. There would be war between Ukraine and Russia. There's not evil or wickedness involved. There's no room for Christians to rejoice and delight in anything that's happening in that war because it is all caused by evil. We can be hoping that Ukraine succeeds. Like, we can be hoping that they're able to fight off Russia and not become part of the nation of Russia. That doesn't mean that we should be rejoicing and delighting in people dying. It's evil. It is caused by evil. And finally, and one that I think is quite possibly most prevalent, is in hiding. Part of not rejoicing in sin is also that we can't ignore it. Sin can't be swept under the rug. It can't be ignored. It can't be put aside. Can someone who's got their Bible open turn to 1 Timothy chapter 5 and read for us verses 24 and 25?
Chapter 5.
Yeah, 24 and 25.
Some men's sins are clearly evident, preceding them to judgment, but those of some men follow later. Likewise, the good works of some are clearly evident, and those that are otherwise cannot be hidden.
The nature of sin is that it will not always remain hidden. Like, at some point, it will be brought to light. Some sins are more public, and they're going to be known really quickly. Some sins are private, and you might not know about it at all. But at some point, it is the nature of sin that it will not remain hidden. At some point, things will be known, whether it's on this earth, whether it's on the day of judgment, whether it's right now, whether it's years from now. Sin is known. It is the nature of it. What are some times in the Bible when you could think of someone who is trying to hide their own wrongdoing or their sin? Say again? Jonah? Okay, yeah. Well, he was quite literally trying to hide it, yeah. It was wrong of him to not want to do God's will, do God's command, and he was quite literally hiding. What else? Good answers. Yes, Achan. That was one of the first ones that I thought of. Taking something, a spoil from war and hiding, trying not to get caught, even though it was against God's will, against what he said. David, trying to hide his sin with Bathsheba, and that mess that happened because of her. Cool. Ananias and yes, Sapphira. I'm trying not to correct you, but Ananias and Sapphira. Yeah, y'all, I wrote out three. The first one came to mind. Y'all got them. Great. Acts 5 with Ananias and Sapphira. When it was, they asked Ananias, like, hey, did you give all the money that you made from selling your land, like you said you did, to the Lord? He was like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sapphira, did you give all the money like you said you did to the Lord? Yeah, of course I did. Also did. And they dragged him out at the same time. Yes. In hiding, yes.
Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve, yeah, that was yeah, like they like tried to hide being the only two people on the planet. Yes. It's almost like it's part of our nature to be ashamed of sin and not want people to know. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, isn't it? Being the only two people on earth that's still trying to hide from the God that is in their midst in the garden. Behavior that fails to reject sin and instead chooses to hide it is the polar opposite of godly love. True love does not sweep sin under the rug. It does not try to hide sinful behavior from others. True love, it treasures truth. It celebrates good behavior, moral behavior, and promotes virtue. It has nothing to hide. True love is transparent. So, we talked about what it means to rejoice in wickedness, ways that we may fall into that, and what it looks like. But what should we rejoice with? What are some things that you could think of that we should be rejoicing with? If we are to rejoice in the truth, if we are going to say that the truth, we can kind of equate to the gospel, right? What are things that we rejoice with?
Church.
Both good answers. Salvation. We can rejoice that we can be saved and that others can be saved. We can rejoice in that we have the church. We have people here on this earth that are going to encourage us and help us along the way. Like-minded people that have similar struggles. What else?
I think we can rejoice that when we do see sin, there's always a way out. There's always a way, if it's in our life or someone else's, there's a true way out of that. And there's a solution to that. And that's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Because God knew we were going to sin. He knew he couldn't be in the presence of sin. So he sent his son to die for us. So when this happens, when we fail to reject sin, fail to reject evil, when we sometimes may rejoice in some form of wickedness, when we sin in some way, we can rejoice in the fact, like Jeremy said, we have a way out. Jesus came to die for us. We're not toast here. Like we're not left to die. God knew what was going to happen and sent his son. We can rejoice in that. What else?
Other people's victories. We're supposed to rejoice with those who rejoice. So, like, I know sometimes that can be harder than it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. So we should be rejoicing when other people are rejoicing. If something good happens to someone else, if there's a victory of some kind, you got over this, you defeated that, you are doing better in this area, that's a reason to rejoice. Because you have a brother or sister who at one point was struggling, or at one point was in this state, and they've gotten better. And that's a reason to rejoice. What else? We can rejoice with any behavior that reflects the gospel. That could mean every kind of forgiveness that is offered. We can rejoice in. Every act of kindness, true kindness that we see from a brother or sister, we can rejoice in. Every soul that is brought to Christ, we should be rejoicing in. Every moment of wisdom that you see out of yourself or out of a brother or sister should be rejoiced. Every visitor that you see is being welcomed with love. Like they walk into these doors and you see your brothers and sisters welcoming them and making them feel like they are at home. That is a reason to rejoice. That is a reflection of the gospel and of the good news. Every opportunity that we have to be together and study God's word and be encouraged by one another is a reason to rejoice. We should be ecstatic. Like this, we have an opportunity to be together. We can have an opportunity to be away from the world and to be in a place where we're full of like-minded people. We can study the Word of God, His way of communicating with us, and we could be encouraged We can be drained by those in the world, and we can come to here in this room and be encouraged by one another. Every opportunity that we have to rejoice, we should be rejoicing. In all these opportunities, we rejoice. We rejoice in what is true and what reflects truth. And that means that not only we should be rejecting what is evil, this also means that we should be rejoicing in what is true. We should be looking for opportunities to rejoice. When a new soul is brought to Christ, are you rejoicing? When you have a time scheduled to be together and study God's Word, whether it be Sunday morning or Wednesday night or hubs or Tuesday night devotional on campus or whatever else it is, are these moments that you are rejoicing? Are you rejoicing because of the opportunities that you have to be with those whose behavior reflects the gospel? If we are to show God's love, then we cannot ignore sin or take delight in wrongdoing in any form, but we also must rejoice when the gospel is reflected. So there are some things to think about. If you have any questions, come talk to me. Let's go into the auditorium for Kidwell.